Welcome to Democrats of Greater Tucson. We're absolutely delighted and thrilled to have you here. My name is Larry Bodine, and I'm the president of Democrats of Greater Tucson. And today our speaker is going to be Claire Knipe. So Claire, just give us a wave. Let's turn to announcements. Kathy, why don't you continue the role that you were on?
Okay, with Claire, that's right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well and you have gotten your COVID vaccine. You know, what I know is coming too is eventually we will all be in person again, which I'm looking forward to. But even though we'll be in person, we'll still have access to DGT through Zoom. So don't worry, when we go in person, if you can't come, that's okay. You can still be on DGT through Zoom. So of course, we would like all of you, if you have not yet joined or renewed your dues, to do so. It's only $20, and we hope that you will be able to support us.
Well, we've got one stop to make before we get to Claire, and that would be with Sandy Binion. Sandy, let us know about upcoming meetings.
Upcoming meetings. Well, next Monday, we have Lane Santa Cruz, who is the city councilwoman from Ward 1. And she's going to speak to us about what is going on there in her ward. And then following her, we have Ann Shanakin. She's the Deputy Director of Housing and Community Development. So those are the next 2 weeks. We hope you can join us.
Thanks very much. I see Lucy has her hand up, Lucy Messing.
Okay, I just wanted to make the announcement that the Education Caucus is back up and running, and we're very excited to be able to do this. We are going to have our next meeting on Zoom on March 10th at 4:30. And I know that some of you have actually participated in our Education Caucus, either as supporters or getting information from us. And so we encourage you to join us. There's always something going on with public education. And then if you email me and you're interested in attending, then I will send you the link for our March 10th meeting. Thank you.
All right, super. Thanks very much. Let's get right into our program. Our speaker today is Claire Knipe, and she's the political director of Arizona List, which is a statewide organization committed to electing pro-choice Democratic women in Arizona, and they focus on state and local races. Arizona List works to recruit, train, and elect qualified candidates at all levels of government. And it's a very effective organization. Arizona List celebrated 75 wins in the November 2020 elections, sending 37 pro-choice Democratic women to Arizona elected positions. And we're really counting on the Arizona List in the next election in 2022, because the Democrats still need to flip 2 seats in the state Senate and 2 seats in the state House. And then finally, the Democrats will have control again. So a little bit about Claire. She's born and raised in Tucson and graduated from the University of Arizona. She first became involved in politics when she started a Young Democrats chapter in high school. And then she started volunteering at the Pima Dems and has been involved ever since. Claire, welcome to Democrats of Greater Tucson. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. So thank you so much, Larry, for that introduction. As he said, my name is Claire Knipe. I am the political director for Arizona List. We are an organization committed to electing pro-choice Democratic women within the state of Arizona. We are the only mega PAC in Arizona that is solely dedicated to electing women within the state, and one of the largest financial resources for pro-choice Democratic women candidates. We were founded in 2004 by a group of women who saw the incredible work that Emily's List was doing to elect pro-choice Democratic women to national offices, and realized that we had a gap here in Arizona because there weren't enough women running for local offices. So that is why why we are solely focused on state and local races. We don't touch federal races at all, so we don't get involved in Congress, Senate, or the U.S. election or the U.S. presidency, but everything else. So what do we do? So we really work on identifying women that are ready to run and just need to be asked. Statistics have shown that women need to be asked to run 7 times before they seriously consider running for office. And there are so many incredible women who just need to be asked. So what we do is we help. We then work with these women and provide trainings and opportunities for them to learn the information that they need to run races. We help them during their campaigns with staff support, interns, financial donations, things like that, and continue to help after they're elected by support, with once elected, helping them with recall efforts, things of the like. So in our 17 years that we have been in existence, we have elected over 150 women. Many of those women, incredible women like Katie Hobbs, who have been elected to multiple offices in that time. And in this past year, we elected 75 women, 32 of whom have never been elected before. So it was absolutely incredible, got a lot of new faces in there. So I'm going to review a little bit of what those 75 wins look like, where we were able to make gains, and how that came together. So looking at the Senate, we had 6 senators that were Arizona List endorsed that were reelected, including Sally Ann Gonzalez, Lisa Atondo, and Victoria Steele down here in Pima County. Our pickups, so people that we added to the Senate, Rosanna Gabaldon moved up from the House, same with Kirsten Engel in LD10, and we flipped a Senate seat in LD28 with Christine Marsh. So now the Senate is 14-16 Democrats. The Arizona Senate is actually 50-50 women, which is incredible. So we're happy that we added these 3 women, including flipping a seat. Looking at the House, these are all of the incredible women that we re-elected. So down here in Southern Arizona, we had Alma Hernandez in LD2, Charlene Fernandez in LD4, and Pam Powers-Hanley in LD9. And then our pickups.
Oh, I've unmuted. It says you are using the computer audio.
Our pickups
which
in
is
House
set at 100.
Include Andrea D'Alessandro in LD2,
wait, it just said some.
down from the Senate. Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton, who was a
It
pickup.
says
Kirsten moved up to the House. Melody Hernandez, a pickup seat up in the Tempe, Phoenix area. And we flipped a seat in LD20 with Judy Schwiebert. So the House is now, we did lose a seat in the House with Dr. Jure Peaton in LD4. So we are still at 29-31 in the House. And then this is what our county looked like. Here are our county re-elections. In Pima County, we re-elected Sharon Bronson. We had more re-elections in other places throughout the state. But look at all of our county pickups. Over half of those are in Pima County. So we have Laura Conover as our new Pima County attorney, Gabriela Cazares-Kelly as our new Pima County recorder, Suzanne Druby as our new Pima County assessor, and Adelita Grijalva as our new Pima County supervisor in District 5. We also picked up some other seats, including a flip for the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors with Donna Michaels, the first Democrat we've had on that board in a very long time. And the Coconino Board of Supervisors was actually elected 4 Democratic women, which is incredible. So looking at some of our city council wins, we re-elected Kate Gallego as mayor of Phoenix, Ginny Dickey as Fountain Hills mayor, Pat Dennis in Avondale, and Betty Guardado for Phoenix City Council. We have 2 Phoenix City Council candidates going into the runoff, Deborah Cross and Yasmin Ansari. So those races are actually coming up very shortly. Ballots were just mailed. Election day, I believe, is March 6th. And then here are some pickups. We added 2 new women to the Flagstaff City Council with Becky Daggett, Miranda Sweet, 2 women to the Sedona City Council with Kathy Kinsella and Holly Plug, and we added 2 Democratic women to the Fountain Hills City Council, which if you don't know Fountain Hills, it is not a very blue city. So we're so excited to have Sharon Grzybowski and Peggy McMahon. And then here comes some long ones. We had a lot of school board candidates this year, which was so excited. We have noted which ones were the top vote getter in their race. So down here in Pima County, we re-elected Becky Quintero to the Sunnyside School Board. We also elected Kat Ripley to the Pima Community College Board. That was a flip, and that was so exciting. We had another Community College Board candidate Jacqueline Smith in Maricopa. She won in a district that did not go blue for the supervisor seat. So we were super excited to get her in there. All of these pickups, and I have a whole nother slide, these were all women that we added to school boards throughout the state, including Natalie Luna Rose and TUSD. So we had a lot of incredible races this cycle. And last but certainly not least, we added a woman to the Corporation Commission and a Democratic woman, Anna Tovar. So we were so excited to get her in. So some representation wins. As I mentioned, the Arizona Senate is now 50% women, which is incredible. The Arizona legislature is 44% women. I actually believe that has changed with the election of Jasmine Nigran Blackwater, our new representative from LD7. The national average is only 29%. So Arizona is actually doing really great on that front, and that is a good thing to continue. As I said, the Coconino Board of Supervisors is 80% Arizona list women. Unfortunately, we are down to 60%. One of the supervisors left for an appointment with the Biden-Harris administration, but we are so excited to see her move on and to see what she does. And lastly, we have 2 Democratic women on the Arizona Corporation Commission with Sandra Kennedy and Anna Tovar. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what Arizona List is doing and looking forward to 2022. As Larry mentioned, it is a big year. To start, we have all of our statewide races, save for the 3 corporation commissioners we just elected, who will be up for re-election. And we are already starting to work with a slate of incredible women that have approached us saying that they're interested running in these offices. So we are so excited to start working on that front and then starting to tackle the state legislature once we know more about redistricting, but that really starts with training. We are offering trainings for candidates, volunteers, staff, and everyone in between to help build the bench for candidates, staff, and volunteers in 2022. We know that that work starts now. People don't just wake up on January 1st, 2022, ready to start their campaign with a full staff and everything they need. So we're doing that work now by holding trainings, really starting to work with candidates now who are interested in getting them everything they need early. That's really one of the tenets of Emily's List that we tried to hold over, is getting candidates started early, helping them to get that extra leg up. That also includes fundraising. So spending a lot of this year working on fundraising to make sure that we have the funds to distribute to candidates that we work with throughout the year. We had 75 candidates that won in 2020. We had over 100 candidates on the ballot across the state. And so really, in order to help all of those candidates throughout the state, it requires a lot of money. And then building the foundation for success. So working with these candidates and establishing what are they going to need? What are we going to need in 2022 to really flip Arizona blue? Let's take back these statewide seats. Let's make sure we're making these changes. So in talking about that, I want to talk about the Arizona List annual event, which is coming up on March 20th. That is a Saturday at 3 p.m. We are going to have Stephanie Shriok, who is the president of Emily's List and just wrote a book, Run to Win, about how to run successful campaigns, as our keynote speaker. It is going to be a virtual event with an incredible silent auction, and we have opportunities for tickets are $75 for members and $100 for members. The link to sign up is right here, and you can find it at our website as well, arizonalist.org. It will be an incredible event. We're going to be traveling around the state, seeing so many of our candidates from all over, talk about where they're from and their races. We have some incredible awards. Our rising stars this year are both from Tucson. They are interns and young high school and college students who are super passionate about getting other high schoolers involved. So a lot to look forward to. And so lastly, thank you. You can go ahead and contact me if you have, I know we're going to do questions afterwards, but if you are interested in running for office or know someone who is interested in running for office, please send me an email or call me. We are always interested in talking to Democratic women who are interested in running for office, and follow us on social media. And then I think, Larry, you said we would just do time for questions. So I will stop sharing my screen and start answering questions.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. To get things started, I had a question for you, Claire, and that is, what is it that makes a good candidate? Someone who not only can get elected, but who will serve well in government?
Yeah, that is an absolutely wonderful question, Larry. Thank you so much. So I think when we talk about what a good candidate means, we really often hear the word electability, but I think really what it means largely when we look at candidates is connection to their community and why they are running matching with their office. So for example, looking at folks who have won in some tough swing districts like Judy Schwiebert in LD 20, Christine Marsh in LD 28, Donna Michaels and Yavapai, all of those women had incredible connections to their community. They had worked on or run community organizations, and the office that they were running for made sense for them. You know, Judy Schwiebert was a former teacher, and same with Christine Marsh being a teacher. They realized that the education issues they were seeing needed to be addressed at the state legislature, so they were running for the state legislature. You know, if we find someone who is really passionate about a specific issue and working on something specific, making sure that they're running for that office and that they are connected to that community, they make sense for that office. I think those are often the biggest factors for us. We can work on training for public speaking, how to present yourself, things like that. But knowing a community, being a part of a community, and running for an office that makes sense for you and what you want to do is so important.
Let's turn to Susie Anderson, one of our DGT board members who has a question. Go ahead and unmute.
Well, Claire, it's good to see you. I'm just full of questions about electing women. Number one is our governor can no longer run again. So really sad about that. We have Katie Hoffman. Who else is thinking at all about running?
So, Susie, I cannot tell you who is thinking about running that has not made that decision, but I will tell you that we have an incredible woman who is excited and who is ready. She just has not made that announcement yet, so I can't jump the gun there, but I will say that we have an incredible woman who is ready and excited for governor.
All right, we have a follow-up question from Trace Fife, from the one of the young Democrats of Arizona. Trace, go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Larry, and thank you, Claire, for joining us today. My question is, what would be your advice to a candidate that's never run before, that's never really been involved in politics, and what encouragement would you want to give them to overcome those hesitations or fears?
Yeah, I think that is a great question. The candidates that I love working with the most are those that have never run for office before and start a little like shell shocked, like, I don't know what I don't know, because there is so much to learn. So the first thing I would say is just start getting involved, start showing up to meetings. If you want to run for like the legislature, watch the legislature. If you want to run for school board, watch school board meetings. So much of that is filmed and available, and it's stressful to watch, but it's really important to kind of know what you're getting yourself into and if that's something you want to, and then just start finding resources. So Emily's List has a ton of resources just on their website. I know that Run to Win does as well. They really work on targeting younger people, but there are a lot of groups that work on encouraging specific groups to run, like we work for Democratic pro-choice women, that have resources available for those groups that are just like how to tell your personal story, how to talk to voters, how do you strategize about how to start your campaign. All of that information is out there. So just starting to seek it out and piece it together and just showing up. Showing up to those meetings. Are there constituent groups that you think are really important, like the Education Association? Show up to AEA meetings and school board meetings, even if you don't want to run for school board, because you know that that's such an important tenet to this community. Trying to really find a pulse and see where the community that you're looking to represent, what they care about, and seeing how that aligns with you.
All right, super. Amelia Kramer has a question. Please unmute yourself. Go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go.
Great to see you. Any chance we're going to have you be running for office anytime soon? Because you'd be an amazing candidate.
Oh, thank you so much, Amelia. I do not want to run for office right now. I'm still pretty young. So I think I'll take some time and wait, but it's something that I've definitely thought about. I also realize that the things that candidates do the most is talk to people and ask for money and ask for votes, and talking to people on the phone is my least favorite thing to do. So I think that there are some things that I would not like about being a candidate that I really like about working for candidates. So.
Okay. Nick Arnold, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Claire. This has been amazing. I just wanted to ask, because I know you and I have talked about it a lot, are there any lessons about urban versus rural campaigns, and especially as a Democrat in some of those counties not like Coconino, where we don't have any real footholds? Is there anything that Arizona List has done or learned through your school board and county level candidates that the party at large might be able to learn from to make some inroads, especially for our Corporation Commission candidates and other, statewide?
Yes, thank you so much, Nick. That is a great question. And so I'm going to answer that in two ways. One, I think that oftentimes these rural areas, the races look different. And so by kind of understanding that you're using a different playbook for these races, different strategy entirely when we're talking about rural areas, the way that you talk to voters is really different when you can't walk down a street and knock on a couple doors every street, it does look really differently. So things like barn signs and really trying to be innovative and think of different things is really important. The second thing that I will say, especially in terms of larger outcomes and looking at statewide, is the need to have candidates run in races that we know we might not win. It is incredibly important to have candidates running in every legislative district, in every single school board race, every city council race, for a multitude of reasons. Number one, school board races, especially rural ones, we wouldn't know this because TUSD is always exciting and there's many candidates, but often go unfilled because no one runs. And we actually had a couple candidates who ran as write-in candidates in Phoenix who did an incredible job, but it was a lot of work because only one person qualified with enough signatures to sit on their school board. And it was an incredibly Democratic area. And the only people who were running for write-ins were very conservative. So they said, well, you know what? We can run as a write-in as well. But if there aren't a write-in candidate, then that seat just gets filled by the county superintendent. And often, especially in rural counties, those are held by Republicans. So in order for us to have school board seats, someone needs to run. And sometimes that's all it takes. You just need to get enough signatures to get on the ballot, and you're in because no one else runs. So it's really important on that level to make sure that we are actually filling these seats that are available. And also, especially when it comes to these legislative districts, these are the folks that are really able to help our statewide candidates. One of the things that Arizona List does is we help out a lot of our candidates who are doing this cycle, a lot of lit dropping, normally canvassing, and that we will print lit pieces for them with all of their information and on the back, all of our statewide. So for example, we printed a good amount of lit for LD4. And so on the front, we had Lisa Atondo, Charlene Fernandez, and Dr. Jeray Peaton. And on the back, we had our Corporation Commission candidates, Shay Stanfield and Anna Tovar, with a link that included Bill as well. But we included that because we knew that not only were we helping these candidates get their message out and increase turnout in Yuma, Pima County, and in Maricopa County for LD4, but we were helping to get out turnout for the corporation candidates as well. So by working together, we were able to increase the number of people who knew about Anna and Shay, who knew to vote for 3 people, and even knew what Corporation Commission is. So it's really important, I think, to show up because there are Democrats that live in these areas. Even if there aren't very many, we need to remind them that we are here and that there are candidates on their ballot that represent them. We need to encourage them to vote all the way down. But if there's only one candidate on your ballot, it's really who's a Democrat at the top of the ticket. It's really easy to skip a corporation commissioner. It's really easy to skip someone else if you don't know that there are Democrats running. So I think it's really important that we are doing this outreach because there are candidates that are running. There are always candidates running in LD1 and LD5, LD11 that is, we haven't won, but we're trying. Increasing turnout makes such a huge difference. In 2018, I haven't done this as concretely in 2020, but in 2018, the places where we made up, where we increased the gap from what expected turnout of Democrats was, and it was significantly higher, was the same places that we had people run in LD14, in LD8, in LD16. We had women running who were showing, hey, there are Democrats on your ballot. And there are others. Make sure you're voting up and down your ballot. And that really helped to increase. So I think that that's really kind of the important message about working together and showing up in all areas of the state, especially for statewide races.
Susie Anderson, you put a really good question in the chat. Did you want to just go ahead and ask it live?
Yeah, sure. How do we flip Michelle Ugenti-Ritas, Becky Nutt, and Wendy Rogers, and so many other these crazy women who write such horrible bills? How do we overturn their term in office? Who do we have people out there that are good? I know we have in LD 11. We've had two of them in the last two major elections, but they just going up against Mark Fincham and Vince Leach is just almost impossible. You know, what do we do to get rid of these horrible women? And I'm sorry that there are horrible women in the world, but I guess that's a truth.
Absolutely. And there definitely are those, and they are not great. I watch the streaming of the legislature just about every week, so I get to hear the testimonies on some of these horrible bills. But I really think that the way that we do that is by flipping the state legislature in 2022. So it's going to depend on what redistricting looks like. And I can tell you from Arizona List standpoint, the minute that we have those maps, I probably won't sleep for a week in just poring over that voter data to see what is the makeup of these districts, what have they kind of given us in terms of where are we, you know, what does voter registration look like? What does what we call DPI, which is Democratic Performance Index, so we can get an idea of how we think a Democrat will do in this district. And then finding women, we have people who have already committed to run again, like in LD6, which was close, and hopefully we can beat Wendy Rogers this time. Yes, and I know that those women have both talked a lot about lessons learned, and the next day we're ready to talk about, all right, what did we do wrong? What are we going to do differently next year? And I think that that's massive, but we really need to flip the state legislature. As much as we can focus on getting individual people out, the larger problem is that when Republicans control the state legislature, almost zero Democratic bills get heard. We have almost no power. You know, and I think it's not even about individual legislators. It's about them having complete control over our full legislative process right now. So we need to flip that balance, and then we will be able to get things done.
Lucy Messing, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead and ask away.
Hi, Claire. Good to see you. I've really enjoyed the Friday legislative updates. It's so great to see the legislators and have them just speak, and we were able to ask questions. So if you mentioned who was speaking this Friday, I missed it, but will you be doing that throughout the session?
Yes, thank you so much for asking that question, Lucy. I had actually forgotten to mention that. So one of the things that Arizona List is doing in 2021, we are doing a Friday legislative update on Facebook Live every Friday at 3 p.m. with a different legislator. So last week we had Athena Salmon from LD 26. The week before we had Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton from LD 10. And this week we have Rosanna Gabaldon from LD 2, state senator. So it's about 30 minutes that we do just talking about what happened at the state legislature this week, some of the big bills that were heard, both good and bad, normally more bad than good. We do normally list those bill numbers. So for those of you that use RTS, we try to make it as easy as possible to give you that information, talk a little bit about what we're seeing this next coming week and what folks can do to combat that. So that's Fridays at 3 p.m. on Facebook Live.
Question from Linda Burzak. Claire, she'd like to know what effort is being made, if any, to get women with pro-choice Democratic interests to run for judges around the state.
So actually, Arizona List, our endorsement committee, we have an endorsement committee that overviews our endorsements and endorsement processes, has decided that we do not endorse in like JP races, Justice of the Peace, and judicial races. We do have our candidates sign a contract saying that they will always vote pro-choice. Along that, we stipulate kind of what that means. And we don't think that judges should sign any sort of document. It could impede their ability to have rulings and things of the sort. So we've made the decision not to get involved in those races. So I can't speak to that since we aren't doing kind of any work on that level, unfortunately.
I had another one for you, Claire, specific to Legislative District 11, where we got Representative Fincham, who actively worked to shut down the government and take over the Capitol. And it's also the legislative district for Vince Leach, whose primary activity seems to be having the Attorney General investigate Tucson. Any thoughts on what could be done in a district like LD11 where the Republicans have a +10 registration advantage?
So I think LD11 is actually a district that is trending Democratic. I did a lot of work leading up to 2020 analyzing results for the past couple years, especially as our last cycle in the current districts that we have. And LD11 actually has come a lot further. If you look at the results in the general, we get closer and closer every year. Truthfully, I think that 2020 was a bad year for Democrats. If you look nationwide, especially down ballot, state legislatures did so terribly everywhere. We lost a lot of congressional seats. We had some big wins up ballot, but down ballot, there were a lot of hard losses. And I think that LD11 is one of those cases that I think if this had been a better year for Democrats, we could have won. But I think that really it came down to what you can't control what the top of the ticket is. And I think we were getting a lot of people who were either splitting their vote or only really voting top of the ticket and not voting the rest. So I think that LD11 is a district that by, running candidates who are really connected to the area, who are doing that work, I think that we're getting closer and closer. And I think that every year we really do get closer and closer in LD11. I think it depends on what redistricting looks like. The district goes more north, more south, that will greatly dictate as to whether or not it is more friendly towards Democrats. But I think running candidates that are from the area, know the area, it is very rural. You need more volunteers. You need more just people to knock on all of those doors. And so I think really building that work now and starting to find people in LD11. I know that there are many of you on that call to start thinking about how much are you going to be able to do in 2022 for your legislative district? What is that going to look like? How can you start organizing your neighborhood or your community now?
We have a question from Katie Garmany. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, thanks. I'm interested in whether you have any comments about voter registration drives. I've been working with the Sierra Club, and they're actually going to focus on Arizona for writing letters, which is what I can do as a 75-year-old. But I'd be interested in any comments you have on those.
Yes, I personally am a huge fan of voter registration drives. That's one of the ways I got involved. Larry said I started in high school getting involved, and I would do voter registration drives on our campus before the November election for seniors that were about to turn 18. I was about 16 when I did this. So I love voter registration drives. I think that they're great. I think that the one thing that's really important, though, is making sure to keep up relationships with those people that, especially if you're writing them letters and they registered to vote, make sure you're sending them a letter in a couple months saying, hey, did you see that this candidate announced in your district? Have you learned about them? They look great. Keeping up that line of communication or saying hey, the primary is only a couple months away. Here's a website that has all of the candidates running. Even just providing that amount of information and keeping in contact with that person. I think that that's important, that making sure we're not registering voters and then assuming that they check that Democrat box and are going to vote for us on every election all the way down their ballot forever, making sure we're still working for those votes.
All right, we've got a question from Paul Wagaman. Go ahead, Paul.
I have a question that relates to using 2022 as a year to try to flip more. As you look at what's going on with redistricting, I gather that the Redistricting Commission is kind of on hold right now until the Census Bureau finishes their redo of the data for the census. But how does that look for setting up more opportunities to really flip some of the districts that are now kind of dominated by Republican voters?
So the one thing that really does is that does hurt us in time. So what this does, because the census data is being released a lot later, basically all the Redistricting Commission can do right now is get prepared to do the redistricting. In Arizona, we do have some legal requirements as to when we need to see those maps. So I think really what it does is it deprives us of some time that we might have had to do more of that community building within the districts as they're going to look, which right now, we can do the work in what the districts still look like, knowing that they often remain pretty similar. It's not like districts are fully redrawn where no one's in the same area. It's mainly often smaller shifts, unless there's a major change like getting a congressional seat, but that affects more the congressional seats. So those might look entirely differently. But as for the legislature, they're likely to look pretty similar in a lot of ways. So continuing to do that organizing in those areas. I know talking about LD11, another good example is LD4. And that's a hard one. We lost a seat in LD4, even though it's a pretty Democratic district. And a lot of that was, one, due to racism towards one of the candidates running, but also due to some disconnect between the district and the legislators. So, if we were looking at that district saying, well, let's talk to the LD4 voters in Midvale Park and make sure that they know that Lisa Atondo and Charlene Fernandez are two Democrats that are showing up for them, and that we will have a third Democrat for them to vote for come November 2022, and we'll flip that seat. And trying to make that connection between your legislators that are these Republicans, these are the ones that are refusing to pass any COVID measures, that are not doing this work. So let's connect, say, they're not working right now, but in 2 years, we'll have an opportunity to vote for someone new, even if we're in a different district. You can still do some of that community work and building and saying, if there are folks that are mad, who are upset about what things looks like, get them to start using RTS, to start paying attention. And I think that even if we don't have districts or candidates yet, you can still get people civically engaged and get them to start paying attention, because I think that's really the first step.
I've got a question for you, Claire. You mentioned that LD11 is trending Democratic. Do you see that trend going statewide? And if so, what are the one or two issues that really motivate voters to vote for Democrats?
Thank you so much. So I think that trend is going statewide. I think, if 2018 was any indicator, we won Democratic seats statewide for the first time in a really long time. And in 2018, all of those seats that were won statewide by Democrats were won by women. That was not true in 2020 because we had Joe Biden and Mark Kelly. But I think that is something that's true, that especially for certain offices like superintendent of public instruction, women tend to do better for that office, especially as a Democrat, because education is often seen as something that women understand. There are more women on school boards. But I think that one thing that's important in looking at these races is to kind of think about, again, what are those issues? Because for a lot of people, it's really not just Democrat and Republican. They're looking at specific issues. And right now, I think those issues are largely education and healthcare. That has been what we've seen for the past couple years, was that folks really wanted to talk about education. That has been such a large issue in Arizona that folks are starting to understand education on a legislative level. They kind of know what vouchers are and they want to talk about it. They want to hear a candidate who knows how to talk about, like, yeah, I'm not going to shut down your neighborhood school, or I'm going to work hard to make sure that we don't do that. Having candidates that are able to speak to those local issues. And then the other one is healthcare. We have Democratic candidates who often run, I think about Kelly Butler in LD 28, which is a district that was entirely red that we really slowly flipped to being fully blue. And so really one of the things that Kelly did is she runs on healthcare should be affordable and accessible to everyone. She's not, she's running on something that I think almost anyone can get around, saying, I think all kids should be able to have healthcare. I think that that's really important. And those are issues that I think Arizonans as a whole can connect to. And that, candidates, when it makes sense for that office, those are really popular issues to talk about our public education and needing to fund our public education. These are issues that, there's a reason it's on every Democrat's website as one of their top issues, not only because it's a top issue for them, but also because it's a top issue for Arizonans. So I think that really, I would say even just number one is education, 100%. I think that is a top issue that Democrats do well on. And if you're able to talk about it, it can be a really unifying issue within Arizona.
Thanks, Claire. That's really good to know. We've got a question from Susie who inquires regarding the Independent Redistricting Council. Do you think we're going to get another legislative district? And is that dependent on the census?
So I think that we might get another congressional district, and that is dependent upon the census. So Arizona's had a really large population growth, and it just keeps growing. Phoenix is one of the biggest cities in our country and just keeps growing. So Arizona is likely to get a 10th congressional seat, but I don't know too much about where they're going to draw that. They've talked about that. And in terms of legislative districts, I do not think they will stray from 30 districts with 2 members for the House and 1 for the Senate. Going beyond that and changing that would require so much time and effort that they really don't have this year because of that late census data. Although I think it would be very interesting to have our House districts separate from the Senate. It would be a giant headache and pretty difficult to get through and redraw and to consider all of that. So I don't think they'll be making that kind of change, at least this year.
We have a question from Gail Camaras, who inquires, how can local legislative districts best use social media to get our messages out regarding Republican damage to our issues and values?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think, and social media is can be a hard thing to use because there's kind of 2 facets to it, the organic and inorganic. So inorganic would be anything you buy, like sponsored ads. And I think if you're kind of looking towards that approach, thinking about who you want that information to get to. So if you're thinking about like, oh, we're going to use Instagram, thinking about who largely, like the age group of people that use Instagram, what is the way that they're consuming media? I know for a lot of younger people, it's like Instagram graphics that people share pretty widely. So thinking about like, do we have people that are using that as a way to share? How is information getting out? And then the organic side, which I think is kind of the most important, is just things that grow from people naturally sharing them and liking them and things like that. So what are the things that, do well when you put out a Google Doc with a ton of information? Do you get engagement, or do you get better engagement when you just type it out or put it into a graphic? Things like that. I think it just depends on what your audience is looking for. But in terms of the state legislature and like LD10 specifically, I think a lot of the hard part in getting information out is how confusing it is. Like understanding, like having a bill number doesn't mean that you can find out any information about the bill, especially if like the tags don't quite make sense. And there's just like 3 words that don't make sense to you connected, listed next to a bill number. Like that doesn't help anyone know what this piece of legislation actually does. And I think that that language can be hard to get through. So even just telling people like, here are some of the bad bills and here's what they do. Having someone break down that information is such a huge barrier to being involved. I mean, I do this all the time for work and it's confusing to look through the actual language on a bill is often confusing. How things are worded versus how it actually gets implemented and what those consequences are could be different. So kind of explaining out that information, I think, is really important and can kind of help to disperse information in a way that's more helpful for folks.
Let me ask you about TikTok. I'm on the LD9 communications team. Well, we've opened up a TikTok account and put up a couple of videos. What's your take on TikTok?
So I think that TikTok can be a good place, but I think the one thing that is kind of, I had a couple candidates that we talked about this, be just kind of aware of like who your target audience is on TikTok. It's largely young teenagers, so folks who can't vote. So just kind of thinking about like what your information is and who you're trying to reach. I think that it can be good, but I think that one of the hard parts is that it's entirely dependent upon the way their algorithm is set up. So you don't have a lot of control, and like gaining followers and all of that can be kind of hard. But I think just I think that trying any mode of getting communication out there in a different way is great. I think that especially for people my age and younger, a lot of the information that we receive is digitally. So it's not to say when I, go to look at TikTok or someone I know is necessarily looking for political information or looking to hear about their state legislature. But if they see something, they might stop and say like, oh, well, I'm interested. Like, oh, I wonder, what is the Arizona state legislature doing? So trying to find something catchy that'll pull people in. But I always think it's good to explore new mediums. I think we are going to start an Arizona List TikTok as well. We did one video, not officially on TikTok, but in the format with candidates getting ready to run in the primary that was really cute and really fun. And they had a fun time making it. So if for nothing else, I think it could be a fun kind of way just to get different information out there.
Well, I think we're all eager to see you in a TikTok video, so keep us posted on that. Turning to another more practical question of getting the vote out, one thing that hampered us in 2020 was we couldn't go door to door and canvass and actually talk to voters because of the pandemic. Right now, a lot of people I know are getting vaccinated, and I'm thinking by 2020 it'll be all right to knock on doors. What's your take on that? How effective is canvassing in person?
I think that canvassing in person is absolutely crucial. I think as Democrats, we often have to fight for all of our votes. As those of you know that have done GOTV, it's sometimes a discussion of we just need to get people to show up and vote. Like if we can tell them to vote down the ballot, we know they're voting for us. We are fighting for every single vote. And I think being able to have face-to-face conversations where you can answer questions and you can actually talk to someone is so incredibly important. And I think that's one of the reasons that we did not do as well as we could have in 2020 was that we couldn't have these face-to-face conversations. Candidates weren't at the door answering questions. I think in LD10, Kirsten Engel is an incredible example. She will go canvassing and forget that she spoke to someone 2 years ago and think that she spoke to them last week because she had such an in-depth conversation with someone that she remembers off of their name. That those folks are going to vote for her forever, as long as she is on their ballot, because she sat down and had a 20-minute conversation about, well, what is our state legislature not doing for you and what can we be doing? I think that work is so important. And I think that by being able to talk to voters and even just being able to answer questions, when I canvass, most often the questions are pretty simple, like, hey, what do they think about education? What are their thoughts on things that you can answer that they're just interested because they have one big issue? What are their thoughts on the environment? And you're like, well, they would like to protect it. And they're like, okay, great, I'll vote for them. I've had many conversations that go like that because folks are just looking for information. And when someone's at your door, it's a lot easier to ask questions, to say like, oh, okay, that's the date that I need to mail my ballot back on. People look at flyers and you look at it for a second and put it in the recycling bin. You don't spend a ton of time memorizing those dates, but someone looking you in the eyes and telling you, this is when you need to mail your ballot back in. This is who to vote for, I think is so much more impactful. Phone calls are great, but people don't always answer their phone. Catching someone at their door is a really great way of actually making sure that you have that conversation. And also one of the few ways that we can have persuasion calls. When we're talking to folks that we are really trying to persuade toward a specific candidate, being able to have a longer conversation in person really helps. It's a lot easier to have that kind of conversation with someone in person because they know that you're a real person. They're not going to hang up or yell at you and things like that. So I think that being able to canvass in person is so important for Democrats. And I think that it will really help us in 2022 if and when we're able to get back out there and knock on doors safely.
You bet. We have a question from Public Defender Tony Zinman, a member of the DGT board. Tony, go right ahead.
Hi, I came in kind of late, but you might have answered this already, but how do you see the governor's race shaping up in a couple of days? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I talked about this a little, if only to say that I cannot say who we are working with yet, but that we do have an incredible woman who is excited, ready to run. She has just not announced yet. I think the governor's race will end up being pretty messy, if only because we're going to have an open primary on both sides. I don't know who the Republicans are going to run, but I think it'll be a bit of a messy race, but I think that we could win, and I think we have a pretty good chance as long as we work pretty hard at it. So I'm crossing my fingers for a Democratic governor, hopefully woman, in 2022.
I've got a question for you as well. Tell us a little bit more about the training. What do you find are the talents that you typically aim to develop in successful candidates?
Yes, our training program is actually pretty massive, and we have a bunch of different trainings that we offer. So we do have some specific candidate. We just offered a candidate 101 and 102 that started with, how do you know you want to run for office? Is the timing right? Is the office right? What districts are up in your, you might have been like, wow, county attorney in, Pinal County is the perfect race for me, but you just missed it. So you've got to wait 4 years, talking to folks about what race makes sense for you? Is the time right? What are all of the things that fall into pieces as you start to put together our campaign? That was kind of our 101. Our 102 training went over the fundamentals. What is a campaign plan? What does it look like? How do you start building one? And then we really kind of delved into finance and field for that one. And then we offer specific trainings about everything that campaigns do. So our next training is actually going to be on March 3rd, and it is how to be a great volunteer training. So this is going to be a training specific for volunteers who are interested in working on races, whether you have or have not, in any capacity. You can say like, I've knocked on doors, I've made some phone calls, and I want to know how to be better. Or to say, I've helped out on races and There's always a school board candidate in my district, maybe in TUSD, maybe somewhere else, that runs and never has any staff. And I just want to be able to help as much as possible. So we're going to go over what does it mean to be a volunteer on a campaign? What are those different roles and how can you do that best? Do a pre-training volunteers before they go to the candidates to be trained. We're offering some of our upcoming ones. We are doing a fundraising training where we will spend 2 hours alone talking about fundraising. We will talk about everything candidates need to do and with hands-on practice for things like call time, knocking on doors, soliciting votes, things like that. So right now, I know that we have our upcoming trainings planned out. We have how to be a great volunteer, a finance training, a social media training, and a field training that we have kind of planned out. And I'm sure that we will be building in more. We're going to do some more staff trainings with other partner groups towards the summer to start reaching out to folks who were campaign volunteers or interns that want to be staff and start to do that training now so that folks are ready to go. We also partner with a lot of other organizations and do trainings. So we partnered with NARAL before, and we did a really great training back in, I believe, September, where we talked about how do you talk about reproductive rights issues? What language should you use? How do you talk about these issues? How do you talk about these issues in a debate when you get hit with a really hard question? How do you talk about these issues if you're running in a pretty red district and maybe want to shy away from some of this topic? How do you talk about these issues? So we try to offer trainings on whatever candidates need. We often reach out to candidates about halfway through their campaign, as a whole. So halfway through the cycle and say, okay, what do you need help with? You have 6 months, 7 months left of your campaign. What trainings can we offer that would help you win your races? And sometimes people will say, I'm really struggling, to get out my communication. I'm really struggling with my messaging. So we go, you know what? We had 3 people say that they're having issues with either emails or their social media stuff. Let's do a messaging training. And so we're really able to pool together what candidates need and hopefully bring in experts from outside groups, trainers, and things like that to really give our candidates great trainings. One thing that I think is really important is all of our trainings are free for candidates. Always, candidates never have to pay, which also means that we offer trainings for candidates that often wouldn't be able to access them. If you think you're running for city council in Sedona, you don't have an incredibly large budget. You can't spend it on paying a lot of money for a training or oftentimes paying for staff. So when we say we will help train your volunteers that want to be a step up above knocking on doors, we will help train you on the things that you don't know how to do because you're not going to be able to hire staff that automatically knows how. Or we will help you to set up systems that make things easier for you. So our trainings are really all about helping candidates in as many ways as possible.
Claire, thank you so much for addressing today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. You're not only incredibly knowledgeable, but you're just doing terrific work. I wonder if you would close out the program with us and tell us how we can get a hold of you and what is the best way to support you and Arizona List.
Yes, thank you so much. And it has been an absolute honor to speak today. I always love coming to DGT and speaking to DGT. So one of the best ways to get involved with Arizona List is to sign up for our email. You can find that at our website, which is arizonalist.org. Become a member of Arizona List. So it's $100 a year with discounted prices as well. You can separate that out monthly and attend our annual event. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email is Claire, CLAIRE at arizonalist.org. That is the best way to reach me, but follow us on social media, join our email list, and come to our annual event on March 20th.
All right, thank you so much. We really appreciate having you here. With that, we're out of time, and I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank you for speaking, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye, everybody.